There is a Russian enclave situated on the Baltic Sea between Poland and Lithuania, known by its inhabitants as Little Russia. Its capital, Kaliningrad, is separated from Pskov, the closest Russian city, by 3 borders and 600 kilometers, and it's 1,088 kilometers from Moscow as the crow flies. Previously Prussian and then German, it was known as Königsberg. At the end of the Second World War, the Potsdam Conference granted this territory to the Soviet Union. Königsberg was thus renamed Kaliningrad on the 4th of July 1946, before being shrouded in mystery for the next 45 years. In fact, the city was strictly out of bounds to foreigners throughout the Cold War period. Since 1991, it has regained its historical charm and is beginning to open up to tourism by restoring some of its best-known buildings. Economic development has, however, not been neglected, whilst adhering to new ecological standards to preserve the quality of life on this oblast. The city was badly damaged during the Second World War, and it was almost completely destroyed following massive bombardment by the British Air Force in August 1944. 480 tons of bombs were dumped on the historical center. More than 40% of the buildings were destroyed. Only the cathedral survived. In fact, it acted as a waymark for the British planes. The German command had, however, prepared the city well. There were 3 rings of defense, each one consisting of forts and bastions. On the 9th of April 1945, only 3 days after the Soviet offensive, supported by the French-Russian squadron, Normandy-Niemen, the garrison's 100,000 soldiers surrendered. These forts and bastions are still in good condition. Some are now tourist attractions, and others have been put to a completely different use, such as the Amber Museum. But what is amber, a stone or a resin?
Сегодня общеизвестно, что янтарь является застывшей смолой древних хвойных деревьев, которые произрастали 50 миллионов лет назад на части на юге скандинавского полуострова. Сегодня это дерево уже вымерло, поэтому янтарь является невозобновляемым природным ресурсом.
For several centuries, resin has been used in many decorative objects, as we can see from this cane belonging to Patriarch Nikon, the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church in the 17th century, as well as in the famous Amber Room. This was a room whose walls were covered in real amber carvings. It contained 6 tons of amber. The room was given as a gift by the King of Prussia, Frederick William I, to the Tsar of Russia, Peter the Great, in 1716 for the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. But it was stolen by the Germans in 1941 and has never been found. Amber may be a non-renewable natural resource, but Kaliningrad and its surrounding area has an abundance of it. It's thought that 90% of the world's amber reserves can be found here. It's a bit like the gold of the Baltic, and jewelers are well aware of this fact, such as those here in this workshop. It's located in one of the very few remaining port warehouses from the German era.
Развитие моей компании на протяжении 20 лет соединило в себя творчество, высокие технологии, очень творческий, креативный, еще и слово, подход к ювелирным изделиям именно с нашим родным балтийским янтарем, чем мы, в принципе, основываясь на результате, достаточно успешно занимаемся на протяжении. И, конечно, есть большие планы на перспективы для роста. Потому что компания уже в течение 3 лет покоряет страны Европы, и я очень скоро доберусь и до Франции.
But a long way from the port, another building also survived the devastating confrontations. The cathedral, which has become the symbol and soul of the city. Badly damaged at the end of the war, but then rebuilt, it houses the mausoleum of the 18th century's most famous inhabitant, the philosopher Immanuel Kant. Founder of critical philosophy, his main aim was to answer 3 questions. What may I know? What must I do? What am I allowed to hope for? The cathedral was turned into a cultural center during the Soviet era and hosts a large number of concerts throughout the year.
Мы находимся в Калининградском кафедральном соборе, где расположен самый большой орган в стране. Он имеет 4 мануала клавиатуры для рук, педаль и 90 регистров. Более того, он соединен оптиковолоконным кабелем с малым хоровым органом, который находится в противоположной части собора. Малый хоровой орган имеет 2 мануала, 32 регистра и 2224 трубы. В общей сложности, как несложно заметить, это в сумме дает 8525 труб, из которых самая большая труба 10,5 метров, а звучащая часть самой маленькой всего 11 миллиметров.
The cathedral is on the island of Kniephof, which used to be opposite Königsberg Castle. This castle was totally destroyed during the Second World War, and in its place is now the House of Soviets, built during the 1960s. This building is unfinished and unusable, and has gained notoriety as one of the worst examples of post-war Soviet architecture. But there is another lesser-known historical place which has been restored and put to good use, the Uditten Church.
Ну, это одно из самых старых зданий, известных в Калининграде. В Кёнигсберге старше здание, чем кафедральный собор, на 45 лет. Датируется 1288 годом. Здесь было такое местечко Юдитин, территория, которая раньше была автономная, а потом позже была присоединена к Кёнигсбергу. Здесь же рядом есть парк Кроны, известные места для кёнигсбержцев, парк Луизы, Луизенталь-домик, башня Луизы. Это очень известные места. Пряничный домик.
Following restoration, this church once more attracted a large number of worshippers and is now part of an Orthodox monastery. It's decorated very differently from traditional Russian churches.
Этот иконостас уникален тем, что он выполнен в готическом стиле. Так как у нас в Калининградской области очень много старых кирх, которые были перестроены в православные храмы, там и иконостас в православном стиле. А этот иконостас, он был сделан по поручению святейшего патриарха Кирилла, тогда митрополита Калининградского и Смоленского в Смоленске. Здесь выдержаны все стиль готический, строгий, вытянутые формы, и поэтому он вот таким образом уникален, и он вписывается в этот храм, и мы уже все к этому привыкли. Поначалу это было удивительно неожиданно видеть в православном храме такие формы.
Now we've seen the remarkable interior of this old church, let's go back to the city centre to discover other renovations or reconstructions which seek to recreate Königsberg's former charm. The new synagogue, or the Liberal Synagogue of Königsberg, was one of the city's 3 great synagogues at the beginning of the 20th century. Destroyed by the Nazis in 1938 during the Kristallnacht, like the majority of synagogues in Germany, it's been rebuilt. Its facade and external towers are identical to those of the original. The Cathedral of Christ the Saviour on Victory Square is the most important Orthodox building in the city. The foundation stone was laid in 1995 and it was consecrated in 2006. In 2010, a new, smaller church was built just near the cathedral. It's in the same style and is dedicated to Saints Peter and Fevronia of Murom. But let's not forget that this city is also a port and one of strategic importance for Russia, as it's never closed by ice, unlike that at St. Petersburg. Nowadays, it's a commercial port, but it was also an important military port during the Cold War, and reminders of this era can be seen at the World Ocean Museum.
Подводная лодка 641 проекта по панамской классификации «Фокстрот» является одним из самых интересных объектов нашего музея. Лодка дизель-электрическая, несет на себе 10 торпедных аппаратов и 22 торпеды и прослужила 30 лет в наших вооруженных силах. И вот она уже 20 лет стоит у причала Музея Мирового океана и радует наших посетителей.
Споемте, друзья, ведь завтра поход.
It really is worth a visit, as it isn't often that you get to visit a Russian submarine from top to bottom. There's also a cruiser moored here, which has been converted for oceanographic research, although it looks more like a spy ship with its enormous dish antenna. With a bit of luck, you'll also be able to see one of the most magnificent four-masted boats in the world, the Krusenstern. This is actually its home port. Kaliningrad is opening up to tourism whilst reviving its olden day qualities. But it also moves with the times, as Natalia Ishenko explains. Natalia is the most successful synchronized swimmer ever, with 5 Olympic medals for pair and teamwork, 19 world titles, and 12 gold medals from the European Championships.
Калининград – это спортивный регион, который славится своими чемпионами, своими традициями. И спорт у нас всегда развивался, но крупные соревнования, тем более чемпионат мира по футболу, безусловно, дал дополнительный импульс, в особенности для развития футбола. И большое число детей, тех, которых не занимались спортом, они пришли в футбольные секции. Я абсолютно уверена, что вот это вот большое количество, оно перерастет в качество, и мы увидим новых чемпионов, которыми будет гордиться и наш регион, и наша страна.
Having people of sound body and mind should help to pave the way for economic development in this Russian enclave in the middle of the European Union. To promote such development, a number of tax and excise exemptions have been put in place to encourage the creation of new innovative businesses and thus to open up the economy to its European neighbours.
Вся Калининградская область – это особая экономическая зона. Мы находимся в индустриальном парке «Baltic», одном из индустриальных парков Калининградской области, где развивается фарма, где требования к предприятиям, резидентам по чистоте, по экологии особо важны. Работа ведется по проведению регистрационных процедур для выведения на экспорт этого продукта. У нас высокие требования к экологичности и продукции, и производных, и технологий, поэтому вода на выходе у нас чище, чем на входе.
Being strongly attached to Russia doesn't prevent its inhabitants from appreciating the Western way of life, its culture, and its vast market. These things just don't seem incompatible here. And to encourage you to see for yourself, Russia has taken the first step towards the simplification of its entry formalities, especially to the Kaliningrad enclave, an electronic visa. You can register between 20 days and 4 days before your arrival and enter free of charge for up to 8 days. Kaliningrad, less than 5 hours by plane from Paris, is well worth a trip.